we're having a conversation this hour, and we're going to be looking at strengthening legislative oversight for transparent leadership. That it's one of the things that has to take place if you're going to have proper leadership. And to help us out with that conversation this morning, he's already seated in the hot seat once again. Chege Mwaura is the Ngara MCA and the Secretary General for the County Assemblies Forum, and he's here with us this morning. Chege, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Thank you for being here today. And some of these, when we hear such topics, we think, oh my goodness, a boardroom academic, but necessary, because now we're going to infuse into what it actually looks like on the ground. So even as we do that, CT, as you know, goes around the different countries of Africa. He's in a different country this week. He's got a proverb that he's going to share, and we're going to ask you to interpret that according to you for us. Okay, let's go.
Yes, we are in what we call the Ku Belt. The Ku Belt covers a very large area. It's a geopolitical area. West Africa, the Sahel, Central Africa. We are in the Sudan. It's called the Ku Belt because these are countries on the continent that have had very many coups. We are in the Republic of the Sudan. And most people do not know this, but since it got its independence in 1958, Sudan has had 7 coups.
Wow.
7. Now, the toll on human life and the disruption of economic activity and just the upsurge of insecurity in the country has been immense. So that even things that ordinarily one could take pride of, in that this country is moving forward. The time when it seemed to move forward was the 30 years when it was under the leadership of Omar al-Bashir. But you know how that ended. And that cycle began all over again. Most people wouldn't even know that actually on this continent, Sudan is the 3rd largest producer of gold. Yes, most people just imagine you hear the Sudan.
Oil.
But apart from gold, they have iron ore. Okay? They have chromite. They have industrial minerals. They have copper. They have zinc. It's actually a country that's rich in minerals. But with that turmoil, you do not see. If you look at some of the reserves that they have, you've heard of the turmoil in the Darfur area. There are lots of gold in Darfur. So I leave it to you to figure out what it is that causes conflict of this continent, whether it's just freedom that people want or it is other things. The proverb, empty stomachs have no roots.
Empty stomachs have no roots. First, let me say that roots help you strengthen your position and get grounded. So because it doesn't have roots, and it will never fill up, it will never be grounded, it will never say enough is enough, so it keeps on coming. And from the story you've given us, it shows that with this kind of resources, it's always everyone going in looking for something out of it and never getting full.
And never getting full. Well, I mean, that's a place to start, isn't it? It's great. And, you know, the words that we use when we come to governance and when we come to leadership and when we come to, you know, nationhood, statesmen, etc., etc. Transparency is one of them. Oversight is another. Legislative is another. You know, we use them almost as though, you know, we're not placing any importance on them anymore. And without realizing just how important these things are when we talk about good governance. And here we're talking about what the role oversight plays when it comes to transparent leadership. That leaders have to be at a place whereby they say, you know what, come, look at me through and through and ensure that everything is squeaky clean. That is one of the inroads towards making sure that we actually do have transparent leadership. Let's start off with a question to you. Do you agree?
Yes, of course. Transparent leadership, as you said, come have a look at me and tell me what you think of me as at now, and then let's work towards making it better. And that's why at the county assemblies forum, we are, because they're all 47 county assemblies spread across the country, having one conversation which is going to be happening from today. We bring ourselves together and then call the other players within the sector to come and have a look at us and let us talk about the challenges we're having, how good or bad are we doing, and then have a conversation moving forward.
How are we doing in that regard? In terms of come have a look at me.
I think this is the third cycle of assemblies. So it's progress. There are areas that we are strong in. There are areas that we are not very strong in. I'll start like number one, in terms of coherent processes of moving the issues of oversight, in terms of how we look at the executives and how we're able to interrogate things like their public accounts and how the counties are doing, we are moving. In terms of areas like gender, we are not doing very well because it's stagnated for the last 3 terms. I'll give you a good example. Out of the 47 county assembly speakers, there's only one woman. But we made her chair, right? And then, so that is an area of concern. In terms of how we do with regards to oversight and budget spending, it's a conversation. The controller will be in one of the forums. The Auditor General will also be there to give us a status, and the conversation moves from there. So from a self-assessment point of view, it's work in progress. The problem comes in when you now compare us with the National Assembly or the Senate, which has been in existence since before independence.
Yes.
There was a LegCo. So they've grown from that background to what they have today. If you look at the presidency, has been there before the days of, is it Sir Arling Baring or whatever, the governor, the state house was occupied with somebody who's running Kenya. But the county assemblies is actually a new slate that started in 2013. So after about 12 years since we started, a lot of work has gone on. If you look at the impeachments, the issues that we are grappling on have gone down. If you look at how, the travels and all those things have really been managed and stabilized as we progress.
Have they?
Yes.
Travels by whom?
Travels by the county assemblies and the when you started in 2013, 2017, so much of the stopgap measures were not in place. Now they are. How you go, it's programmed in a way that you're able to do reports and all that, and a lot of scrutiny is also done nowadays. So that area has been managed pretty much well.
Now, when you say managed, what do you mean?
Manage in the sense that if you wanted to quantify budget-wise what, for example, the trips are all about, was there value for money, what did you achieve and all that, we are moving somewhere.
Do the assembly that you belong to,
yes,
do they place a direct correlation between what it is that the county can generate in terms of revenue and what it is that they can enjoy as the take-home?
Very good question. Number one, the assembly passes laws, and the bulk of the laws are supposed to be brought by the executive. And so the law that Nairobi passed, I'll give you a good example, the one for title deeds, titling. So that you, nowadays, because of the skyscrapers and all, if you're sectional title, yeah. So now you're not only given a title deed for the area the ground area. Now it's also by the plinth, and that is supposed to help the county government raise more revenue. And so we passed that. Is in the process. We are back and forthing with the executive about changes here and there. But that should be able to help them in terms of raising more revenue. In terms of enjoying, it's not about enjoying. It's about a budget that helps you be able to do your job legislatively, and number two, oversight. So that is one area that we have, we try to ensure that they're doing well. But it's also, we are not the implementers. We pass the law, we give it to the executive, they implement.
No.
If there are gaps, then we come again in terms of oversight.
You see why I asked the question is this, if somebody labors, if it were your own business and you made profits, businesses that do well give their employees even bonuses. It's in that context that I'm speaking.
Yes.
If a county assembly, which is the parliament of the county, in tandem with the executive, are able to ensure that the county expands its revenue base, expands its services to the populace and the citizens of that county, it means then that county has money. If it really does well, it means the county will be rich. So if the county is rich, there is nothing stopping the county from rewarding the people who work within the county well. I'm looking at this thing from a purely corporate perspective.
Yeah.
And why I say this is because a lot of the travel that we speak of and the expenditure, it is not travel for travel's sake.
Yeah.
It is so that somebody can earn some money. It's as simple as that. If you look at it at the national level, it's the same story. How do I make more money? And travel seems to be an easy way out. Yet, if you have a wealthy county as well as a wealthy country, that ceases to be a problem.
Yes.
Now, we complain about what the members of parliament are paid, because if you look at their pay vis-a-vis our GDP, okay, vis-a-vis the debt burden that we have, there's incongruence. That thing doesn't tally.
Yeah.
They should be earning infinitely less.
Yeah.
And I say this because when you look at the private sector where people earn lots of money and they give their shareholders dividends, you have people earning 30 million shillings a month in this country. And that is their salary. Okay, so when you look at what is possible, and yet these businesses that they do within the geographical regions of the county government and the national government. That's where all this money is raised. So how is it that doesn't then percolate to the county so that the citizens of the county can enjoy better services? Now, my question was, how do you get this to happen? Because, for instance, if you look at the revenue of Nairobi, what do we say it is, for instance? Whatever X hundreds of billions per year, whatever it is. What makes us believe that is all that we can do? What makes us believe that we can't do better?
We should. We can.
We can and we should.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just to chime in, the on-source revenue conversation needs always to be a center, part of the discussion.
Yes, it does.
For governments, and because this, as you're saying correctly, is one that opens your ability to spend, your ability to invest more in terms of development and all that. However, it really depends on the budgeting making process that the executive
who approves that budget?
It's the Assembly.
Yeah.
It approves that. But you see, by the time it comes to the Assembly, it has been looked into, done everything except the issue of the passing. Let me finish. The governor, for example, has a budget and economic council that is supposed to work and help him. He has a finance department. He has a treasury department. When you now come to the Assembly, we have a budget committee of members who must not all be technocrats when it comes to issues finance. So why these kinds of conversations we're having and why it is important to strengthen the oversight part is so that the team at the Assembly also is strengthened to be able to scrutinize and to be able to go toe and toe and see these budget processes, these issues that we are being asked, are they up to scratch? Are they able to defend what their projections were? And I give you a good example. In Nairobi, we have a 43 billion budget, of which about 21 or thereabout is supposed to be from shareable revenue, the other from on-source. But how much are we getting? We're raising about 12 point something to 13 billion. Now, of course, if you have the team from Nairobi, they will tell you it's a growth from what it was last year. But that growth is also very marginal. It's maybe a bit about $1 billion. But we have a shortfall of about 9 or 10. And so that is where the conversations start.
Why are they talking about the growth? Why are they talking about the amounts that are collected? Why is there no conversation of what it is that is possible? Why are they talking about what it is that can be anticipated? You see, when you say this is what you raised, against what?
Against what? Against a target of what?
What's the potential? What is it that could be raised? You look at every revenue source. Has it been optimized? The answer is no, it hasn't. Why not? And if it was optimized, meaning if we cut out the theft, if we cut out the inefficiency, if we cut out all these things, how much can we actually raise? that conversation, one doesn't hear of it.
And as well, just to chime in on what City is saying, as City talks about what it is we're raising and what we've not explored as well, there is always the question of even that which we have raised, how are we spending it? How are we using it? Because then again, it is in the very same counties where we still see all these travels and as well as seminars that one would say do not add value when it comes to the day-to-day running of the county.
And let me also open up another picture at the county allocation of revenue that is passed, from the DORA, the Division of Revenue Act, that says national government gets 85, counties get 15% of the shareable revenue. Of the 15, the current one that we're having, you remember that the amounts taken to the county was about 387 billion.
Yes.
The one that goes to the county assemblies is 40. Okay, it's 740. And then now you move to then there was a problem with the mediation. You remember, because of the finance bill that had a problem, so the monies were moved from 401 to 387. So there were cuts. So these cuts, county assemblies got a cut to get now 36 of the 40. But the conversation was midway through the financial year. What am I saying? Of the 36 of the 387 is less than 10%. Yet this is the team that is your first point of check when it comes to oversight. And we're not asking for money to do other things. Can we strengthen the oversight potential of the assemblies so that it can take care of your 387?
I think you raise a very valid point. But as it stands, and you're looking at the county without it being devolved, it's a task that is next to impossible. Given the population of this particular city, the population of this county, if there's a term, the word they keep talking about boroughs and they keep talking about municipalities. If you were to manage the affairs of this county well, it has to be divided. It's a monolith. This entire county cannot be managed efficiently.
It's too big
from City Hall. It can't.
It's too big.
But it's deliberately done so. The confusion that is brought about is useful. Because if, let's say, for instance, where it is that you are an elected leader, if that was part of a borough, don't you think that oversight would be much easier?
It's easier.
Yes, because you'd know exactly the same thing that we have at City Hall, all those divisions and departments would be mirrored there.
In
now,
one
surely,
place.
if it's markets, if it's car parks, if it's businesses, it would be so easy to determine what it is that happens, because the very people who are supposed to oversight and bring the order would be right there.
Because if we do talk about legislation and how these things should actually be carried out, it falls right under the ambit of the assembly. So then one would ask, then how are these decisions made? How are these issues then brought into law? What we often see is that there's a scrambling in the assembly for, the ear of the governor, for example, or that they're scrambling in the assembly for the ear of the SRC, or for the ear of the, control of budgets at the county level. That's what we often see.
Yes.
So there's a legislative assembly, a legislative summit that starts this week, right? Today, actually.
Yes.
So one would ask, even as you have this summit, to go and look over some of these matters. Pertinent issues like this, which, CT and Dennis raise at this point, do they take center stage? And if so, how then do we see that playing out into the year? Whether it's Nairobi County, whether it's Baringo County, whether it's Uasin Gishu, whatever it is, the assembly is mirrored in each and every one of these counties. So why don't we see legislative effort towards some of these things? The effort that we often see is this scrambling that we speak of. Pay us as much as a member of parliament, make sure we get the proper sitting allowances. Whereas there are issues that could actually see counties in terms of their performance go from here to here.
And as well, the fact that even as today you meet with the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget, they have come with reports against these counties. But what we often see or hear is these reports are usually trashed by people in office. We don't even see the county assemblies themselves take up the mantle and say, this is what these officers have said, and we need to dig deeper.
I will answer in two parts. Number one, the conversations are structured in, we are doing about 6 plenums, all in the key areas. Number one, we'll have universal care. Why? Because the conversation about Shisha has always been at the national level. No one is talking about the level 2, level 3s and the challenges of the Shif and Sha at the counties and in the very those basic areas. But what we've done again about it, before the summit yesterday, we called all the chairs of health to have a synchronized position on how we are going to tackle it. Again, we'll now have the controller in the afternoon and all that. So in terms of addressing the conversations from a centralized position, we are trying. And that's what the best we can be able to do, because the mandate of doing legislative business is pegged to the 47 counties without necessarily having to come together. So the challenges we'll have in County 1 vis-a-vis County 2, there is no one is supposed to, you do your, the way it's designed, you just do your own small thing at your own corner.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is now bring us together so that at least in your best practices, it can also be mirrored here. Now, on issues of legislation for it, we do legislate. And implementation of that legislation is where now the proof of the pudding is in its eating. As it is saying, the barrows would be easy. It was a campaign promise by the current government of Nairobi. It comes with, there is actually a CEC member in charge of that. Whatever laws were supposed to be brought have been brought, we've passed them. So the mandate of implementing most of these things that are happening lies actually with the executive. Now, as far as the reports of the auditor,
passed the laws that would enable
for them to actually divide Nairobi.
to the creation
yes. Now it's upon them again to now use whatever we've been passing to make it operational. And remember, they're the ones with the county attorney, the equivalent of an attorney general. They're the ones with the department of barrows. Ours is to help you get the law passed, and then you proceed and act. Now, Dennis asked about...
You speak as though you don't have powers beyond that.
Which other powers? Our powers is to pass the law. And we've passed that law. We now oversight how good or not good.
How well it's been
implemented.
Essentially.
So you get the point. We now come again.
Get the point, actually.
Number one, we come in legislation. And then we come back at oversight. So, for example, we gave you money to be able to do X, right? And then after the financial year, the Auditor General brings a report on how you spent the money in doing X. And then we are oversight.
And the Auditor General essentially puts it back into your hands.
Yes.
And she said it and of course gave the National Assembly as an example last week. But the Auditor General, even at the county level, puts it back into your hands. Should she find that there's a problem here, and here, she essentially says, I've given it to you to then see what you can do. So the question is, what do you do?
We do a lot.
If you find that, for example, that you have given Nairobi County $1 billion shillings, or essentially you've allowed Nairobi County to spend $1 billion shillings to set up, what do you want? What do you want? Roads?
Hospital. Yes.
Okay, hospitals and markets in Nairobi. And you've given them this 1 billion shillings over the span of 18 months.
Yes.
So that at the end of 18 months, 1, 2, 3 then should have been done. The money should have been absorbed. We've been able to see this development project. Yes? At the end of 18 months, so maybe it's at the end of now 2 years, 2.5 years, the Auditor General comes back and says, County Assembly gave Nairobi County governorship $1 billion shillings to spend over 18 months. We've seen that they spent 2 billion shillings and maybe we have a shell of a market and nothing near a hospital. Yes? Auditor General says, well, my job is to report. I have come back to you and I've told you this money that you guys have given, even if you did your oversight, whatever, has not come up to scratch. I am releasing the power, or not even the power, I am making the recommendation to you to then do 1, 2, 3 based on what you have seen. We have never seen, and maybe it has happened, but we've not. Maybe it has happened, but we have not been told.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
That somebody has been made to answer, somebody has been made to pay, somebody has been held to account over money spent for no development project achieved. So we come back to that question. When it comes to legislation, it's very important that money is lost, or city doesn't like that money is lost. Money is taken for other things that's supposed to have been done, and it's not done. We end up in this cyclical nature of over and over and over. Auditor General comes, reports, we move like that.
Let me give you a good example, because I also happen to be the chair of public accounts in Nairobi County, and it's a very good example because we are there. When we came in 2022, the reports that we had to go back to were not taken care of for like 5 or 4 years. So we had a backlog. But the most important thing is that the opinion from the Auditor General were all disclaimers. All right? So we now come and do the interrogation and all that. And we are able to move. If you look at the reports, and that's why I think this conversation needs not to end here, it needs to be occurring, so that the next time I come with the actual report, so that you see actually if I'm lying. If you look at Nairobi County report from the Auditor General latest, they moved from the last, it was disclaimer in 2023. In 2024, they got adverse. This time round, they got a qualified. So we are on step to unqualified. Why? Because we made measures. We have, in our reports, we've recommended and taken the reports physically to EACC, right? Others to DCI. Others we've recommended a removal. Remember when we came in, the county secretary became the first person to be on the chopping board of Public Accounts Committee by virtue of whatever the Auditor General had recommended. That is as far as county executive is concerned. There's a liquor board that collects all the money for as far as liquor is concerned. Their reports had not been done since 2016. We are now up to date. They also moved from disclaimer to now they are qualified. County Assembly, because we also oversight ourselves, again, there is that movement. What am I saying? There is an area of taking issues to EACC to move. There are others that you recommend removal, or and the gaps that we found in a place like Liquor Board. Everyone was acting. So we recommended that these positions be filled professionally. Okay. And so there's movement. The only gap that we actually have a big challenge with is that communication for us to give you, and you
exactly
guys to
what
give
is happening
to the public, so that people can be able to see what movement is there.
Okay, Chege Mwaura is the MCA for Ngara Ward, as well as the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum, and in the hot seat with us this morning at 20 minutes to 8 o'clock, we're having a conversation about strengthening legislative oversight for transparent leadership. Is transparent leadership, can you equate that to putting information out in the public?
Yes. Yes, to some extent, and a large extent, because it's hard to evaluate somebody if you do not have the information. Yeah. So
why isn't that done often? If transparent leadership is the end goal, to say that, look, we need to be sure that everything that we do is out in the open, money spent, decisions made, challenges, crossed over, etc. Why don't we have that as often? It looks like a lot of government and a lot of legislative issues is where information and communication goes to die. Why doesn't it come out in the open? Or do you feel that it's not, important to share?
We actually would want to share even more, but the problem is that there's like a systemic, dysfunctional system that makes the county assemblies unable to move because of the, the constraints they have in terms of their operations. I give you a good example. For assemblies to access money, of course, it's released by the control of budget, but she must get an okay from the CC Finance, who is an executive and appointee.
CC Finance in the county.
Yes, who is an appointee of the governor. And so if, and that's by law. So now, here you are oversighting Governor X, but again, you still need Governor X to access your salaries. to access your operational money for operations and oversight. So if you come too much, uskumea sana, then they hamper you. Like now, there are counties that maybe even the salaries for January have not been paid. You get. So what are they left to do? Whether they'll go and do overdrafts and all that, just to make sure things are a bit quiet. But in terms of operationalizing the funding for assemblies to be purely independent, so that they can exercise their oversight mandate fully, is hampered. And that we pushed the last discussion with the president. There is a law, Senator Kathuri from Meru, who sponsored that particular bill. It is still in Senate, and because it's a money bill, it has again to go to National Assembly. And if it goes to National Assembly and then they have their fights of mediation, again we'll be stuck. But you get the point. So. Sometimes it's that systemic dysfunctionality that has been created by law to make things a bit jam when it comes to us being able to give what's happening at the county from an oversight point of view.
Now, we talk about oversight and the counties are making sure that it is done. But oversight goes beyond just looking at books of accounts, right? So here we are talking about the fact that there is a law that was brought to you by the county, by the governor, and you have passed that law and returned it to him. All that is pending is the implementation of this law. Is it not oversight in querying why the implementation is not taking place? That, as well as I'm just going through your website, the Hansard department.
Yes.
Finally, at least I know you have a Hansard report. And all I'm seeing on the Hansard report is not everything that happened during that house. We are seeing members of parliament as well, members of the county assembly, not in the house. We have to ring bells for 10 minutes for you to be there. So in terms of even you members yourselves checking yourselves out and making sure that you do the right job, feels as though you're running short of your responsibilities.
We are not running short, but let me start from the first one of implementation. Actually, we even have an implementation committee that's supposed to oversight the reports that were passed to the assembly. How come we are slacking or whatever? And so again, the capacity, the secretariats that run the assemblies, forget about us who are elected, and Kenyans can elect whoever they want depending on the choice they had at that time. The more important team is to have the back end that are taking things to move and preparing the reports and all those kind of things. There is a lot of slack in there. And so what happens? We are slack, and there is nothing that prompts. You see, at public accounts, you are prompted because you have to act with these reports within 90 days. There's nothing that prompts you that you have to push this implementation by X number of days. So it now depends on the capacity of the chair, the capacity of the team that is there to move things. Now, back to the plenary issue. In their wisdom, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission removed the plenary sitting allowances, right? And it's good. It's good that we now just work with the basic salary. But then again, even as you are trying to save, you're also hampering the operations that were making sittings like plenary.
Chege, why would I pay you to do your job? Why would I pay you sitting allowance to come do your job?
Look at it this way.
It's a fair question that every Kenyan asks.
I want to explain it this way. The way the pay structure is for an elected member, you have a small amount that is basic. You have another component that is pegged at committee sittings. Right? Be they plenary, be they sectoral, departmental kind of committees. Okay? So before there was split between the committee sittings and the plenary sittings. So if you're saying why should you be paid, why are they also paying the committee sittings? You get the point. So,
I'm also asking why.
Yeah, why?
Why?
So then just be paid the same way. Your pay structure has a basic allowance. I don't know, traveling, all those things. That is how it was. That is how it was structured. It used to help in terms of ensuring that there is.
You're encouraged to come to work?
Maybe not. You will even now. Even now I'm working. Yeah, because my role is not just legislative. Actually, there is a legislative, there is representation and oversight. The bulk of the work is representation, because representation is what I'm doing in Ngara, is what I do when there's a fire and I'm called and have to make sure I rally, whatever, and that is the bigger part. The oversight part comes after, because you're now looking at the things that you legislated for, is the executive being able to implement it properly. The legislative bit is what even Kenyans do not really appreciate very well, because here is what the laws, where the laws are made. Now, whatever number of laws myself have also even introduced to the assembly, when I now go, it can't be a talking point that I pass this law to Mwananchi.
Yeah.
Them, they are interested in the representational bit. This road is not working, this light is not working, garbage here is not collected. Those are the issues.
Okay.
And you have to be the same, with the same breath, come now and do legislative. Legislative is not done individually. Yes, you can bring the law, but for it to be passed, you need the whole house sitting. Now, you have a few guys coming, the others feel, let me use the bulk of the time representational, because at the end of the day, that's what Kenyans feel, that I'm doing good or not. The oversight bit is here and there, because it depends with the expenditures, it depends with how well you understand the reports. So the weakest link and the ones that get unfortunately deprioritized becomes legislative, and that's where the problem is. So it's not about being paid to work. No, it's just about how do you prioritize, because at any given time, you're either oversighting, you're either legislating, or you're either representing, and the bulk of the work is representing.
Okay, and I think that once you see that there are different parts of a moving vehicle, right? Everybody needs to pull their weight. That unfortunately the cyclical regression that we see contributes to the underdevelopment of a whole nation. It doesn't really matter where you are. How many wards are there in Nairobi? 85. So I'm imagining a situation whereby each ward representative, for example, was doing the three things that you insisted on today, and doing it to the maximum. Not just, I don't feel like it on a Tuesday, but to the maximum as was required of oversight, of legislation, and of representation. That those things were happening. You need the lights on here, we need the garbage picked up, we need, this road. Wouldn't it be a fantastic county? We're not even talking about the intervention or the extra added work of the governor's office. That every single ward, right, with the funds that were supposed to be channeled to the ward, with the person who sits at the position of representation, the person then who makes sure that any monies that were supposed to come in here have actually gone to do what they were meant to do. I don't think we would be having a problem that we are seeing today.
We would be happy.
So there's a big responsibility then on the shoulders of because they're levels, right? And the MCA is the basic level of representation at the county level. So if everybody was pulling their weight, we would not be having some of the problems that we're having. There's no reason why there are wards in Nairobi that should be inundated by garbage. Precisely. There's no reason why we should have wards in Nairobi that their roads are in a shambles.
Precisely.
No reason why markets should be. Do you see where I am going?
Yes,
there's a responsibility that lies at that level that it either starts to build and goes up. Development in the development circles, they'll say you start at the basic level and then it begins to rise. And that's what the expectation is. So we dare say that perhaps at that legislative forum that you start off today, there's some hard conversations that need to be had.
And they're very good. That's why we're having this conversation, and that's why we wanted to be here to open up your audience also to follow through the discussions there and ask these hard questions. But let me say this, with the same breath, the way people get elected, you have no control over. They're going to get the guys whose heads are focused on getting the three things done to perfection. Unfortunately, there are wimps or people who feel we like this guy now, or he's in the party I like, and all those kinds of things, and all these things come to play. Now, it's when Mwananchi gets after 2 or 3 years and realize, I think we made the choice again. Now we have to go back again, and then maybe the second choice is not yet again up to. But they also, you see, it's a 5-year term. So there is that element of the civic education to Mwananchi, so that from the onset they put people of a certain caliber and a certain grade and a certain type of urgency to do work there. Number 2, this pushing for garbage to be collected, this pushing for the roads is not the MCA implementing.
No, it's not.
It's the executive. So now you push the executive, and then I give you a practical example. I call the chief engineer roads in Nairobi. I have this kind of potholes in my area. Can I see? And then I'm told that the casuals that had started work when they're doing CBD, because you don't have money, we've laid them off for a while. So now, to what extent can I? And then, of course, guys asking, this pothole, really? Just outside the Steamer Plaza? You are not seeing it. I see it. I take my kids through that road. So I want it fixed badly as everyone else. But then again, I'm also hampered because I'm not the one implementing. So when the person you're implementing, they says, we don't have cash, we don't be able to do this like that. So that whole cycle needs to be corrected.
Is it true? Is that reason that's often given, that we don't have money? Is it true?
And it's not even in Nairobi only.
Is it true?
Yes, because again,
there is no money.
It's not that there are 2 ways. Number 1, the prioritization of that money is a problem. And then number 2, also at the national level to the counties, the shareable revenue takes a while. They're not given the money at the right time.
You see, Chege.
So the issue about money is just not one channel. It's you look at it, you have to look at all the other variables and then be able to agree who is the person who's getting the biggest blame.
You see, Chege, when you talk about representation, you talk about those who put you into office, right? Now, here we talk about a city that is supposed to work and function well.
Yes.
And the county does not work in isolation from the Constitution of the Republic. So here we have laws that talk about matters to do with, say, environment and whatnot, noise pollution. You find that it is the same county that is giving licenses to clubs to operate in residential places. And one begs to ask, at what point then does your assembly sit down and say, this goes against the law of the land, goes against our responsibility to represent, hence better needs to be done by the people? Because it can't be that the county is giving out licenses to go damage and harm the citizen.
You see, at that point, the license has already been given.
Against the law.
Yeah, against the law. So when you are now coming to complain, you are talking about somebody who's been given the right for the next 365 days to operate. And so it becomes, there's a litigation, all those things. So the problem started from the onset, at the issuing, and the guidelines are there for you to be able. And by the way, there is even a local committee that must pass. That
who sits on that committee?
Locals.
Just
the team from the locals, a team from county executive. Right, the liquor officer and all that, and then there should be, and by the way, even the OCS has a position in that thing, and so there's that team, and then you ask, they bring the reports, and you see, everyone signed in like. Now, to what extent are you supposed to?
After they've signed. After, because I'm sure the regulations, you are told this is what you must do. If you have music, this is how you must go about playing it. All those things are there. The complaint comes about when those are not followed. And so there's noise pollution. People say, but all this noise.
There comes in then the enforcement part.
Precisely.
So who's supposed to come back and now ensure that compliance is done?
But you see, you're calling the OCS who sits in the committee who approved it.
That's the thing. So
you see, then the approval process may even just follow the letter of the law.
Yeah.
The problem usually is the implementation part of it. Because more and more, we have businesses within estates that didn't exist before. And not all businesses are complained about.
True.
Some are actually welcomed. Some people find no problem with.
And let me add something, because I had a meeting with the guys who bar owners. There's also another problem. The ones that are licensed and the others who are not licensed and selling illicits and still operating. So their problem is not even, there's a team that is okay with the compliance, but actually in terms of the ones who are licensed distributors and the ones who are selling alcohol within a specific area are actually not as many as the ones who are selling illicits.
But there are those who are also legally in business but breaking the other laws, like say environment, because it's the county who gave them licenses.
And I think this conversation needs, first of all, to continue. And then number two, more emphasis and more light need to be shed to the operations of the executive. Because the executive is the one that has the power to implement and the power to enforce. We come in as an oversight that this was not done well. But to that extent, I can pass, we remove that person. And there is a process that goes through that, and of course it's a political process that maybe gets to a point when you're told, oh, this guy comes from our party or he comes from my tribe. All those things comes into play, and making a law, somebody says, is not a very good process if you look at, because all these things come into play.
What can we expect over this next couple of days as you have this legislative forum? What can we expect for people to really buckle down and bring out the issues that are very, that are actual priorities to see counties move from here to here? Because it seems we've been doing this instead of this.
First of all, I would wish that people get to understand what happens from the conversations, and what are the processes that are being made in terms of unlocking and unbundling the those barriers that we feel are the ones that are making us not make a few progress steps ahead. The others that are these are considerable steps that have been made in certain areas, the areas that we are lagging behind. So that conversation needs to, first of all, acknowledge that in the space of devolution, there are also county assemblies. The notion has always been we are all under executive, which we are not. We have assemblies, we have legislatures at the county level. What is their role? What is their voice when it comes to issues like the national issues like SHIF and SHA? When it comes to budgeting, when it comes to oversight, what are they doing? And then you start shedding light county to county, and what is everyone doing? I give you a good example. For you to run public accounts, you must be the minorities. Now, most of the counties are one-sided. You go to Homa Bay, everyone is ODM, maybe one or two sneaked through as an independent or a minority. But that is the guy who becomes chairperson.
Yeah.
Now, when he brings this report, he's told, usisumbue our governor who belongs to our party. So even within his own committee, he's a minority. Even a committee of 7, if you are only 2 people who are, and that's the true nature of most of the counties, except maybe Nairobi, where we almost half and half. Yeah. Very few counties have that advantage. So we also need to grow to the point of getting independence, getting different political players in all these counties, so that checks and balances can be balanced.
Place. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes.
The legislative forum takes place this week. It's starting off today, where members of county assemblies will then be, into to try and get forward. So we want to thank you so much for being here. And we can't let you go without Kamara, who tells you that your haircut is actually quite splendid. Baba is very nice, as it were. Chege Mwaura is the MCA Ngara Ward and the Secretary General of the County Assemblies Forum, has been our guest this hour. Thanks for being here. A lot of work to be done. We look forward to you coming back to tell us progress.
Thank you.
Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.